I still remember the exact moment I realized something was terribly wrong. My daughter-in-law Vanessa smiled sweetly as she held up my phone and said, "I just cleaned up your contacts, Angela. You had too many old numbers. When I checked, every important name was gone: my bank, my lawyer, even my closest friend. It felt like someone had quietly erased my lifeline. But what Vanessa didn't know was that I had already called the bank before she ever touched my phone. And that single call changed everything. She thought she was isolating me. She had no idea I had already started building my defense. If you've ever felt controlled or pushed aside by someone your family trusts, I want you to stay with me on this story. Please like and subscribe if you've ever experienced betrayal in silence, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every story. After my husband passed away, my house in Columbus, Ohio, became too quiet for its own good. The ticking clock in the kitchen sounded louder. The empty chair at the dining table felt heavier every day, but I learned to live with it. I had to. My son, Ethan Robinson, was all I had left. Ethan used to call me every Sunday without fail. He would tell me about his work in IT, about small frustrations, about things that didn't matter, but still made me feel connected to him. Those calls were my routine, my comfort, my proof that I was still needed. Then he met Vanessa Carter. He met her at a technology conference in Chicago. I remember the way he described her the first time. "Mom, she's different," he said. "She actually listens." That should have been my first warning. When I met Vanessa, she was everything a mother could hope for at first glance. Polite, well-spoken, always smiling just enough to seem warm, but never too much to seem fake. She brought me flowers the first time she visited. She remembered I liked chamomile tea. She even complimented my late husband's old woodworking tools in the garage. I wanted to believe she was a blessing, so I did. At the beginning, everything looked perfect. The wedding was small but elegant. Vanessa wore a simple white dress, and she cried during her vows. I remember thinking, my son is safe with her. But perfection never lasts long in families like mine. After the wedding, the changes were small at first. Ethan stopped calling every Sunday. Then it became once every 2 weeks. Then Vanessa started answering his phone more often than he did. "He's in a meeting," she would say gently. Or, "He's resting. It's been a long day." Her voice never sounded rude. That was the dangerous part. It always sounded reasonable. I told myself they were just adjusting to married life. Every couple needs space, I thought. But then I started noticing something colder underneath the surface. When I visited them, Vanessa always seemed prepared, not just tidy strategic. The house was always perfectly arranged, as if she had rehearsed how everything should look before I arrived. Even Ethan seemed different in his own home. Less relaxed, more careful, like he was being watched. One evening I came over with a homemade pie. Ethan opened the door, and for a split second I saw relief in his face. But then Vanessa appeared behind him, and the relief disappeared instantly. "Angela," she said warmly, hugging me a little too tightly, "you didn't have to come all this way." But her eyes were already scanning me, not in a welcoming way, in a measuring way. That night I noticed Ethan barely spoke. Every time he opened his mouth, he glanced at Vanessa first, like he was checking if it was safe to answer. That was not normal. Still, I tried to excuse it. Marriage is complicated. Young couples argue. I didn't want to be the mother who saw danger in everything. But then came the first real shift. Vanessa started controlling time. She would schedule our visits instead of Ethan. She would say things like, "We have to be careful not to overbook weekends," as if I was an appointment, not family. Then she began controlling distance. "I think it's better if Angela doesn't come over too often. I once heard her tell Ethan on the phone, thinking I was in another room." Ethan didn't argue. That silence hurt more than her words. After that, I stopped feeling like a mother visiting her son. I started feeling like an intruder in his life. My friend Carol Jensen noticed it before I fully admitted it to myself. She watches everything Carol said one afternoon over coffee. Every word, every move. That woman doesn't miss anything. I laughed nervously at the time, trying to dismiss it. But later I realized Carol was right. Even at church, Vanessa began to subtly control things. She would sit beside Ethan during services and whisper to him. He would nod without looking at anyone else. Pastor Raymond once asked about Ethan volunteering again, and Vanessa immediately responded, "We're focusing on family stability right now. Not he. That word stayed with me longer than I expected. One night I called Ethan directly. I just wanted to hear his voice. He answered quickly, but I could hear something in the background, Vanessa's voice low and sharp. Ethan's tone changed instantly. "Hi, Mom," he said, but it sounded rushed. "Are you okay?" I asked. A pause. "Too long." Then he said, "Yeah, I'm just busy. Vanessa and I are working through some things. Is everything all right between you two?" Another pause. This time I heard breathing on the other end. Not his, hers. "Everything's fine," he finally said, but nothing about his voice sounded fine. After that call, I sat in my kitchen for a long time staring at my phone. Something in me knew I was losing him. Not suddenly, not violently, but slowly, like water draining from a sink you didn't realize was open. That's when I started paying closer attention, and that's when I noticed something else. Small financial alerts, emails I didn't remember signing up for, notifications about login attempts to my bank account. At first I thought it was a mistake, maybe a glitch, maybe spam. But then Vanessa asked me a very specific question during dinner one evening. "Angela," she said casually, "do you ever think about simplifying your finances? Too many accounts can get confusing at your age." "At your age." She said it like a gentle concern, but it landed like a warning. Ethan didn't look up from his plate. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just emotional distance. Something else was happening. Something involving money. Something planned. And I had no idea how far it had already gone. But I was about to find out. After that dinner, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Vanessa's words in my head, simplifying your finances at your age. It wasn't just what she said. It was how carefully she said it, like she had practiced it in front of a mirror, like she already knew exactly what reaction she wanted from me. The next morning, I checked my phone again. Nothing obvious had changed, but something felt off in a way I couldn't explain. My instinct told me to look deeper into what I had been ignoring. That's when the isolation truly began. Ethan started canceling visits more frequently. Sometimes he would call and sound genuinely apologetic. "Mom, I'm sorry something came up again." But before I could respond, I would hear Vanessa in the background. Not yelling, never yelling, just present, like a shadow standing right behind him. And then Ethan's voice would change, tighter, shorter, more controlled. "I'll call you later," he would say quickly, then hang up. Later never came. When I tried to visit them unannounced, Vanessa always opened the door first, always smiling. "Angela, we weren't expecting you. she would say, as if surprise visits were something inappropriate rather than something a mother might do. Ethan would appear behind her within seconds like he had been waiting for a signal, and every time I saw him he looked more tired. Not physically tired, emotionally drained, like he was carrying something heavy he wasn't allowed to put down. One afternoon, I brought him his favorite homemade cookies. He stepped outside alone for a moment, and I finally saw him without Vanessa hovering. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "I'm fine, Mom," he said, but his eyes didn't meet mine. Before I could push further, Vanessa called from inside the house. "Ethan." Just his name. And he immediately turned back, like a reflex, like he had been trained. That was the first time I felt fear. Not loud fear, not panic. Something quieter, something colder, something that told me I was watching my son disappear in real time. That night I called my friend Carol Jensen. "I don't like it," she said immediately after I explained everything. "She's isolating him, Angela. Step by step." "I don't want to overreact," I said. "You're not overreacting," Carol replied firmly. "You're noticing. But noticing doesn't always give you power. Sometimes it just gives you sleepless nights." A few days later, Pastor Raymond Cole stopped by my house after service. He had known my family for years, long before Ethan got married. "You seem troubled," he said gently as we sat in my living room. "I feel like I'm losing my son," I admitted. He nodded slowly like he had heard this before from others. "Sometimes control doesn't look like control at first," he said. "It looks like care, until it becomes dependency." His words stayed with me long after he left. That was when I started observing Vanessa more closely. Not just what she said, but what she did when she thought no one was paying attention. She controlled conversations effortlessly. If Ethan spoke too long with me, she would subtly interrupt with a question that redirected him. If I mentioned something emotional, she would respond with logic instead of empathy, cutting the moment short. She never argued loudly. She didn't need to. She simply redirected reality. Then came the first real crack in Ethan's voice. One evening he called me late. His voice was low, almost whispering. "Mom, I can't stay on long. Are you safe?" I asked immediately before I could stop myself. Silence. Then a shaky breath. "Yeah," he said. "I'm just tired." There was something different in that silence. Something heavy. "I miss you," I said. Another pause. Then softer than I had ever heard him speak. "I miss you too." And then I heard it. A faint sound in the background. A door closing. Steps approaching. "Vanessa." Ethan's tone changed instantly again. "I have to go." Click. The line went dead. I sat there holding my phone long after the call ended, my hands trembling slightly. That was when I realized something terrifying. Ethan wasn't just distant. He was being monitored. Every call, every word, every emotion. And I was being slowly removed from his life piece by piece. But I still didn't understand why, until the bank emails started getting worse. One morning I woke up to 3 notifications in a row. Login attempts, password reset requests, all from unknown devices. My stomach tightened. This wasn't random anymore. Someone was trying to get inside my financial life. And then during a short visit to their house a few days later, I saw something that confirmed my fear. Vanessa was standing in the kitchen holding Ethan's phone. Not casually, not like borrowing it, but studying it. She looked up at me and smiled. "Angela," she said softly, You really should clean up your old contacts. Too many unnecessary people can cause confusion." I felt a chill run through me, because in that moment I realized she wasn't just managing Ethan's life, she was preparing mine, and I had no idea what she had already started without my knowledge. But I knew one thing for certain. This was no longer about family disagreements. This was about control, and I was running out of time to understand how deep it went. After that day in Vanessa's kitchen, I stopped pretending this was just family tension. Something had shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in a way that made every small detail feel heavier. Every silence felt intentional. Every smile felt rehearsed. I started paying attention to things I used to ignore, and what I found made my stomach tighten in a way I still remember clearly. It began with my emails. One morning, I saw a notification from my bank, Fifth Third Bank, confirming a login attempt from a device I didn't recognize. The location showed another state. My first instinct was denial. Maybe a mistake. Maybe spam. But then it happened again the next day. And again 2 days later. 3 login attempts in less than a week. That's when fear stopped being emotional and became practical. Someone was trying to get into my account. Not guessing, not randomly clicking, trying repeatedly. And then came Vanessa's new habit. She started asking questions that felt harmless on the surface but carried weight underneath. During dinner one evening, she casually stirred her coffee and said, "Angela, have you ever thought about consolidating your accounts? Banks can be so complicated when people get older." Ethan didn't react. He rarely did anymore unless she looked at him first. "At your age," that phrase again, always gentle, always polite, always pointed. I remember looking at her across the table, studying her expression. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't testing me emotionally. She was measuring me financially. That realization made my skin feel cold. After dinner, I noticed Ethan wasn't himself. He kept checking his phone under the table. His hands were slightly tense, like he was expecting messages he didn't want to see. When Vanessa left the room, I leaned closer. "Ethan," I said quietly, "is everything okay at work?" He hesitated. That hesitation again. It was becoming a language of its own. "I'm just busy, Mom," he said quickly. Too quickly. But before I could say anything else, Vanessa returned and the conversation ended. Like always. The next morning, I went through my desk drawers. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for at first. Old statements, documents, anything that might explain what I was sensing. That's when I noticed something odd. A small folder had been moved. Not gone. Not missing. Just shifted. Slightly out of place. I opened it. Inside were copies of my insurance policies, my property documents, and even an old will draft my late husband and I had made years ago. I don't remember ever leaving that folder out, and I certainly didn't remember anyone else having access to it. My heart started beating faster. That afternoon, I called Pastor Raymond Cole. He came over within the hour. When I showed him everything, he didn't react immediately. He just sat quietly reading the papers, his face growing more serious by the minute. Finally, he said, "Angela, has anyone asked you for your financial information recently?" "Yes," I said immediately. "Vanessa." He nodded slowly. "I don't like this," he said carefully. "Not at all." That was the first time someone else confirmed what I was beginning to feel in my bones. This wasn't just emotional manipulation anymore. This was something structured, intentional, and dangerous. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in the house felt amplified. Every creak of the floorboards made me sit up in bed. I kept thinking about my bank account, my documents, my phone. Then I remembered something worse. My phone. I picked it up and checked my contacts. That's when I realized something subtle had changed. A few names were missing. At first I thought I was mistaken. Maybe I had never saved them properly. But then I saw it clearly. Daniel Harris, my bank manager. Gone. Rebecca Miller, my attorney. Gone. Carol Jensen, my closest friend. Gone. My breath caught in my throat. I scrolled faster. More names missing. My emergency contacts. My doctor. Even Pastor Raymond's number was no longer there. I felt a wave of dizziness hit me as I sat on the edge of my bed. This wasn't accidental. This was targeted. Someone had gone into my phone and erased my safety net, and only one person had been near my phone recently. Vanessa. I didn't confront her immediately. Something inside me told me not to react yet. Instead, I went quiet, observing, calculating. That's when I made a decision I will never regret. I called the bank. Not through my phone contacts, those were gone, but by dialing the number from memory one I had known for years. Daniel Harris answered personally. Angela. Is everything okay? He asked immediately, hearing something in my voice. No, I said. Something is happening and I need you to listen carefully, and for the first time I told someone everything. The login attempts, the financial questions, the missing documents, the feeling of being slowly erased. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Daniel said something that changed everything. Angela, someone has already tried to make changes to your account. My grip tightened on the phone. What kind of changes? I asked. He paused, then replied, adding authorized users and requesting access to your full financial profile. My stomach dropped. Was it approved? Asked. No, he said firmly. It was flagged immediately. But Angela, the request included your son's name. Ethan. I closed my eyes. So it had already started. Not just suspicion, action. Someone was actively trying to reach into my financial life using my family, and I suddenly understood something terrifying. Vanessa wasn't just isolating me emotionally, she was preparing a full takeover of everything I owned, and I had no idea how far she had already gone before I even noticed. But after that phone call, I stopped being a passive observer. I started becoming something else. Someone who was ready to fight back. Quietly, carefully, and before Vanessa even realized it, I had already taken the first step. The moment Daniel Harris said Ethan's name during that phone call, something inside me shifted permanently. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was clarity. A cold, steady kind of awareness that made everything I had been experiencing suddenly connect into one disturbing picture. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time without moving. The morning light came through the curtains warm and normal, but I felt completely separated from it, like I was watching someone else's life from a distance. Vanessa wasn't just being controlling, she was building something. And I had just learned I was already inside it. That same afternoon, I did something I had never done before. I went to the bank in person. Fifth Third Bank had always felt like a place of routine for me. Quiet lobby, familiar faces, polite conversations. But that day, everything felt different. Like I was walking into a room where something had already happened without me. Daniel Harris met me in his office immediately. He didn't smile. That alone told me everything. Angela, he said gently, closing the door behind him. I'm glad you came in. I sat down, my hands already tense. Tell me the truth. He exhaled slowly and turned his monitor toward me. There it was. A digital record of an attempted account modification. My name. My account. And 2 additional names listed as requested authorized users. Ethan Robinson. Vanessa Carter. My throat tightened. Was this real? I asked. It was submitted electronically, Daniel replied, but it was flagged because of inconsistencies in verification. We held it before anything was approved. I nodded slowly, trying to breathe. Do they know it was blocked? I asked. No, he said. And that's important. Whoever submitted it still believes it went through. That sentence changed everything, because now I understood something critical. Vanessa thought she was succeeding, and Ethan, if he was involved at all, might not even realize what his name had been used for. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Angela, I need to ask you something directly. I met his eyes. Has anyone in your family recently had access to your phone documents or personal accounts? I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said. My daughter-in-law. He nodded slowly like he had heard this too many times before. Then we need to act carefully, he said. Financial exploitation within families is more common than people realize, but it escalates fast. That word escalates stayed with me, because I already felt it escalating around me. When I left the bank, I didn't go home immediately. Instead, I sat in my car for nearly 20 minutes staring at the steering wheel, trying to decide what kind of person I needed to become to survive this. Not angry, not emotional, strategic. That was the only way forward now. Before I returned home, I stopped by Rebecca Miller's office. Rebecca was a family attorney who specialized in estate protection and elder financial abuse cases. I had met her years ago through a community seminar, but never thought I would need her services like this. When I explained everything, she didn't interrupt once, not even a single time. She just listened, carefully. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. This is not a misunderstanding, she said firmly. This is structured manipulation. Those words made my chest tighten. She continued. The deletion of contacts, the attempted account access, the social isolation. It's a pattern. And it usually has one goal, control of financial authority. So what do I do? I asked quietly. Rebecca didn't hesitate. First, she said we secure your financial access beyond their reach. Second, we document everything. And third, she paused slightly, we let them believe they are still in control while we gather evidence. I looked at her carefully. You mean, act like I don't know? She nodded. Yes. That was the moment I realized I couldn't just protect myself. I had to outthink them. The next day, I returned home and acted exactly as before. Calm, polite, slightly forgetful. The version of me Vanessa believed she understood. And within hours, she arrived. Of course she did. She always arrived when she thought things were stable. She brought groceries that I didn't ask for. She smiled more than necessary. She touched my arm gently when she spoke like she was comforting me. How are you feeling, Angela? She asked. Tired, I said softly. I think I've been a little overwhelmed lately. Her eyes softened immediately. Perfect. That was exactly the reaction she wanted. Maybe you need help organizing things, she said sweetly. Phones, accounts, documents. It can all get confusing. I nodded slowly. You're right, I said. It does feel confusing lately. Behind her calm expression, I saw something subtle shift. Satisfaction. That was the moment I knew she believed she was winning. Later that evening, she asked me something I wasn't ready for. "Do you still have your bank login saved somewhere?" I hesitated just long enough for her to notice. Then I smiled weakly. "I think I forgot it," I said. She laughed gently. "That's okay. I can help you reset it tomorrow." Help. That word again. Always disguised as kindness. After she left, I closed my door and exhaled deeply. Then I picked up my phone, the same phone she had cleaned, and opened a hidden backup system Daniel had helped me set up earlier that day. My real contacts were restored. My real numbers were back. My safety net was no longer gone. And more importantly, Vanessa had no idea. That night, I made another call. To Rebecca. "Everything is in place," she said. "Now we wait for the second move." "What second move?" I asked. She paused. "The one where she becomes desperate." I didn't fully understand what she meant at the time. But I would soon, because desperation has a way of revealing the truth faster than strategy ever could. And Vanessa Carter was running out of time without even knowing it. The morning after Rebecca said we wait for the second move, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. Not peace. Something more dangerous than peace. Clarity. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't reacting to Vanessa anymore. I was observing her. And that changed everything. I made coffee like usual, opened the curtains, and sat at my kitchen table as if nothing in my life had shifted. But inside, I was fully alert. Every sound outside the house felt sharper. Every notification on my phone felt like a test. Around noon, Vanessa texted me. "Vanessa." "Hi, Angela. I was thinking of stopping by later. I made you some soup. You've seemed a little stressed lately." I stared at the message for a long moment. Soup. Care. Control disguised as care. I replied simply, "That would be nice." Then I put the phone down. When she arrived that afternoon, she looked almost radiant. Perfect hair, soft makeup, warm smile. She carried a small container of soup like she was performing kindness itself. Ethan wasn't with her. That was unusual. "Where's Ethan?" I asked gently. "Oh, he's tied up with work," she said smoothly. "You know how stressful things are for him lately." I nodded as if I believed her. Inside, I noticed something new. She was alone with me on purpose. That had never happened before. We sat in the living room. She placed the soup on the table and immediately began scanning the room. Her eyes moved subtly from my phone to my desk to the hallway where I kept important documents. "You really should rest more," she said. "At your age, stress can affect memory. At your age again." I smiled faintly. "I suppose you're right." She leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. "Actually, I was thinking, it might be easier if I helped you organize your contacts. You seemed a bit confused last time I checked your phone." There it was. The opening. Not a question. A step forward. I tilted my head. "You already helped me with that." She blinked. "Just once." "A small crack." "Oh," she said quickly. "I mean, sometimes things don't stay organized unless someone maintains them regularly. Like updates I asked." "Yes," she said immediately. "Exactly like updates." I nodded slowly as if considering it. Then I said something I had rehearsed carefully. "Vanessa, I appreciate your help. Really, things have been difficult lately." Her expression softened instantly. That was her trigger gratitude. But I continued softly. "I think I might already have someone helping me with my accounts." For the first time, her smile froze slightly. "Oh," she said. "Yes," I said calmly. "The bank has been very attentive." Mr. Harris even called me personally. That was the first real shift. Her eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. That's nice, she said carefully, but sometimes banks can be slow with older clients. They don't always understand urgency. Older clients, not customers, not account holders. Clients. As if I needed managing. I leaned back slightly. He seemed to understand me just fine. A silence followed. Not long, but heavy. Then she smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes. I just worry about you, she said softly. That's all. Of course she did. Always worry, always care, always control. After she left that day, I immediately called Rebecca. She's escalating, I said. Rebecca didn't sound surprised. That means she suspects something is off, she replied. Or she's running out of time. What do you mean running out of time? I asked. People like her don't usually stop, Rebecca said. They either succeed quickly or they become desperate. That word again. Desperate. The next morning confirmed it. I woke up to find my front door slightly ajar, not wide open, just not fully closed. My heart stopped. I walked slowly toward it, every instinct screaming at me to turn back, but I didn't. I pushed it open fully. Nothing was missing, no signs of forced entry, but something had been moved. My phone charger on the table was slightly repositioned. The remote control angled differently. Someone had been inside. Quietly. Carefully. And intentionally. I immediately called Daniel Harris. I think someone entered my house, I said. There was a pause. Did anything go missing? He asked. No, I said. But things were moved. That pause grew heavier. Angela, he said carefully, this is no longer just financial activity. This is physical intrusion. I felt a cold wave run through my body. That evening, Rebecca insisted I stay somewhere else temporarily. I don't like this level of access, she said. We need distance. But I refused. No, I said. If I leave now, she wins control of the narrative. Rebecca was silent for a moment. Then she said, Then we speed up the timeline. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room in the dark listening to every sound of the house, every creak, every shift in air, every small noise that used to feel normal now felt like a signal. Around 2 a.m. my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A man's voice. Rough. Nervous. You need to be careful, he said immediately. My breath caught. Who is this? I whispered. I can't say he replied, but I know Vanessa Carter. My entire body went still. What do you want? I asked. A pause. Then, she's deeper in trouble than you think. Gambling debts, loans, identity stuff. If she can't fix it soon, she's going to do something reckless. My grip tightened on the phone. How do you know this? I asked. Another pause, because she already dragged other people into it before. Then the line went dead. I sat there for a long time afterward, staring into the dark. So Rebecca was right. This wasn't slowing down. It was breaking open. And Vanessa Carter wasn't just trying to control me anymore. She was trying to survive something that was collapsing around her. And when people are cornered, they don't think logically. They strike. And I had just become her closest target. After that anonymous phone call ended, I didn't move for a long time. The house felt different in a way I couldn't explain at first. Not louder, not quieter, just more aware, as if the walls themselves had started paying attention to me. Vanessa wasn't just manipulating from the outside anymore. Something was closing in, and now I knew she was not acting alone in chaos, she was reacting to one. The next morning, Ethan came to visit me without warning. That alone made my stomach tighten. Ethan never came unplanned anymore. When I opened the door, I immediately saw it. His face was exhausted in a way sleep couldn't fix. His shoulders were tense, his eyes slightly red like he hadn't been resting properly for days. "Mom," he said softly, "can I come in?" Of course I let him in, but something felt wrong immediately. He wasn't just tired. He was afraid. We sat in the living room, and for a few seconds neither of us spoke. I studied him carefully. His hands were trembling slightly when he placed them on his knees. "Ethan," I said gently, "what's going on?" He exhaled slowly like he had been holding his breath for days. "It's complicated," he said. That word again. Complicated was always what people said when they were trapped. "Is it Vanessa?" I asked carefully. His eyes flickered. That was enough. He looked down. "She's under a lot of stress." That sentence was rehearsed. I could hear it immediately. Stress from what I pressed. Silence. Too long. Then he said finances. Work. Things I didn't fully understand at first. I leaned forward slightly. "Ethan, look at me." He did. And I saw it. Not just stress. Fear. Real fear. "She's been handling some accounts," he said quietly, using my name on things I didn't fully read. I thought it was just temporary. My chest tightened. "Your name," I repeated. He nodded. "She said it was to simplify things, that it would help us get approved for some short-term credit adjustments." My mind immediately went back to Daniel Harris's words. Adding authorized users. Ethan Robinson. Vanessa Carter. It wasn't just about me anymore. They had already expanded outward. "Ethan," I said slowly, "did you sign anything?" He hesitated again, then shook his head slightly. "Not directly. She handled most of it online. She said I agreed in messages. Messages. Digital consent. Easy to manipulate. Easy to fake clarity." I felt a cold anger rising in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "Has she ever shown you the full details of what she's doing?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. That silence told me everything. "No," he finally said. Then softer. I didn't think I needed to question her. That broke something inside me, not because he was weak, but because he had been trained into trust. And training is something you don't notice until it's already complete. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He looked at it. His entire body changed instantly. Tension, alertness, fear. "Is it her?" I asked quietly. He nodded. He didn't open the message immediately. He just stared at it like it was a warning. Then he whispered, "She knows I'm here." My stomach dropped. "How?" I asked. He shook his head. "I don't know, but she always knows." That sentence hit me harder than I expected. She always knows. Not suspicion, not guessing. Surveillance. Control. We sat in silence again, but this time it was different. He wasn't just my son in trouble. He was someone being watched. And I was suddenly aware that my house might not be as private as I believed. "Ethan," I said carefully, "you need to listen to me very closely." He looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had his full attention. "I've been working with the bank," I said, "and a lawyer. Nothing has gone through. Everything she tried has been stopped." His eyes widened slightly. What do you mean? Stopped. Vanessa attempted to access my accounts, I said, and tried to add both of you as authorized users. It was blocked. His face went pale. I didn't know that, he whispered. Because she didn't tell you, I said gently. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. She said everything was approved. She told me it was already done. There it was. The lie structure. She didn't just manipulate actions. She manipulated outcomes. I watched him carefully. Ethan. I said, you're not in control of what she's doing. His voice broke slightly. I thought I was helping her. That was the worst part. He believed he was participating in something functional, not destructive. The door suddenly opened. Neither of us had heard the car. Vanessa stepped inside. Perfect timing, perfect control. Her eyes immediately locked onto Ethan, then me. And in that instant, the entire atmosphere changed. Oh, she said softly, smiling. I didn't know you were here, Ethan. But her tone didn't match surprise. It matched calculation. Ethan stood up quickly. I was just talking to Mom, he said. Vanessa walked further inside, slowly scanning the room, talking about what she asked gently. I felt something shift in me, because I realized something important in that moment. She wasn't reacting emotionally. She was assessing damage. I was just visiting, Ethan said quickly. Vanessa smiled again, but it was tighter this time. That's nice, she said. But you should have told me. I was worried. Worried. Always worried. Always watching. Then she looked at me directly, and I saw it. For the first time. Not warmth. Not manipulation disguised as kindness. Something sharper. She knew. She didn't know everything, but she knew enough. Enough to feel the structure shifting under her control. Ethan stepped closer to her instinctively, and I realized something heartbreaking. Even now, part of him still followed her lead. Vanessa placed her hand lightly on his arm. We should go home, she said softly. Not a question, a direction. Ethan hesitated, for the first time, and in that hesitation, I saw the smallest crack begin to form. But cracks are dangerous because they mean pressure is building, and pressure always leads to collapse. Vanessa turned back to me. Her smile returned, but her eyes didn't. Angela, she said quietly, we should talk soon, properly. Then she took Ethan's hand, and they left. And I sat there alone, listening to the silence they left behind. But this time, I wasn't afraid, because now I understood something very clearly. This wasn't just about control anymore. It was about exposure. And Vanessa Carter had just realized she was no longer the only one watching. After Vanessa and Ethan left my house that day, I sat in silence for a long time. Not the kind of silence that feels peaceful. The kind that feels like pressure building behind your ribs. Something had changed in the way Vanessa looked at me. It wasn't obvious to anyone else. She still smiled. She still spoke, gently. But I had seen it in her eyes just for a fraction of a second. Recognition. She knew something was slipping. And people like Vanessa don't tolerate slipping. That night I called Rebecca Miller immediately. She knows I said the moment she picked up. There was a pause. How do you know? Rebecca asked calmly. The way she looked at me, I replied. It wasn't confusion anymore. It was calculation. Rebecca exhaled slowly. Then we moved to phase 2. Phase 2, I asked. Yes, she said. We stop observing. We start documenting aggressively. The next morning, everything felt different again. Ethan didn't call. Vanessa didn't text. The absence should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like waiting. Around noon, Daniel Harris called me. His voice was more serious than usual. "Angela," he said, "there's something you need to see." I drove to the bank immediately. When I arrived, Daniel closed his office door before speaking. "We ran a deeper audit," he said. My stomach tightened, and I asked. He turned his screen toward me. At first, it looked like normal financial activity logs. Then I saw the pattern: multiple credit inquiries, loans opened under Ethan's name, additional applications tied to Vanessa Carter, and then something worse: identity cross-linking. My breath caught. "What does that mean?" I asked. Daniel's expression darkened slightly. "It means someone is using shared identity data, addresses, phone numbers, even behavioral verification patterns to build financial access across multiple accounts." I felt cold. "Is that legal?" I whispered. "No," he said firmly. "It's fraud." My hands tightened in my lap. "And Ethan?" I asked quietly. Daniel hesitated. "That's the complicated part," he said. "Some of these accounts show his consent, but others don't match his usual verification behavior, so he might not even know I said." Daniel nodded. "Exactly." I felt something heavy settle in my chest. So Vanessa wasn't just manipulating me. She was building a network, a financial web that tied Ethan and me together without either of us fully controlling it. Angela, Daniel said carefully, "There's something else." My eyes lifted. "We traced one of the loan applications to a secondary contact." He paused, then added, "It belongs to Vanessa's brother, Tyler Carter." That name meant nothing to me at first, but then Daniel continued, "He has a history of gambling debt and unpaid loans, multiple states, multiple institutions." Everything clicked into place slowly. Not just manipulation, dependency, desperation, and external pressure. That afternoon, Rebecca came to my house. She didn't sit down immediately. Instead, she looked around carefully, like she was assessing risk in the environment itself. "We're dealing with something bigger than family control," she said finally. "This is financial survival behavior." "Survival," I repeated. "Yes," she said. "People like Vanessa don't always start with intent to destroy. Sometimes they start with debt, pressure, and then they escalate when escape routes close." I felt uneasy hearing it framed that way. "So what do we do?" I asked. Rebecca opened her folder. "We prepare evidence for legal escalation," she said, "but there's something you need to understand." I waited. "She's going to escalate too." That evening, I noticed something strange. My mailbox had been opened. Not forced, just slightly misaligned. I didn't call anyone. Not yet. Instead, I walked inside and checked every room. Nothing was missing, but something had been moved again. Subtle, intentional, like someone was testing how closely I was paying attention. That night, I barely slept, and at 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice, breathing uneven. "You need to stop," she said immediately. My body froze. "Who is this?" I whispered. A pause. Then, someone who used to work with Vanessa. My heart began to race. "What do you mean used to?" I asked. "She's not stable right now," the voice said quickly. "The debts are getting worse. Tyler is pressuring her. She's running out of options." My grip tightened. "What options?" I asked. Another pause. Then the words came quietly. Your assets. Everything inside me went still. She thinks if she can access your house equity or retirement funds, she can buy time. Maybe even erase what she owes. My voice dropped. And Ethan? A pause again. He's collateral, the woman said softly. Not the target. The tool. The line went dead. I sat in the dark holding my phone, feeling something shift inside me again. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. This was collapse. And I was standing at the center of it. The next morning, Rebecca called an emergency meeting. She's going to make a move soon, she said firmly. How do you know I asked? Because people in her position don't wait once they realize exposure is coming, Rebecca replied. That afternoon, Ethan showed up again, but this time something was different. He didn't look exhausted. He looked resigned, like someone who had already accepted an outcome he didn't want. Mom, he said quietly, Vanessa wants to talk to you. My stomach tightened. About what I asked? He hesitated, then said, something official. And in that moment, I understood. The next move wasn't behind my back anymore. It was coming directly to my front door, and I was finally going to see exactly what Vanessa Carter was willing to risk when she believed she still had control. When Ethan told me Vanessa wanted to speak to me about something official, I felt a cold stillness settle in my chest. Not fear this time. Preparation. Because I understood something important now, Vanessa didn't make random moves. Every step she took had structure, timing, intent. And if she was choosing to come directly to me, it meant she believed she still had leverage. That alone told me she was either desperate or cornered. Did she say when I asked Ethan carefully? He hesitated, rubbing his hands together like he was trying to warm them even though the room wasn't cold. Tonight, he said finally. She wants to come over tonight. My eyes stayed on him. And what did you say? Another pause. I said okay, he admitted quietly. I didn't know what else to do. That answer hurt more than I expected, not because he agreed, but because he still felt like he had no choice in anything. I nodded slowly. All right, I said. Then she comes. Ethan looked up quickly. Mom, I don't think you understand. She's been under a lot of pressure. Things are getting worse for her. There's always pressure when someone is hiding something. I replied gently. He didn't respond. That silence told me everything I needed to know. That evening, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Daniel Harris at the bank. She's coming, I said simply. There was no surprise in his voice. We expected this, he replied. We've already prepared documentation for any financial claims or coercion attempts. The second call was to Rebecca Miller. She's initiating contact, I told her. Good, Rebecca said immediately. Do not agree to anything, not verbally, not emotionally, not indirectly. And the third I asked? I'll be there in person, she said. The final call I didn't expect to make, but I did anyway. Pastor Raymond Cole. I think tonight is going to reveal everything I said quietly. There was a long pause on the other end. Then I will pray for clarity, he said, and truth. By 7:42 p.m., I heard the car pull into my driveway. Not Ethan's, Vanessa's. I stood near the living room window and watched as she stepped out. She wasn't alone. Ethan followed behind her, and for the first time I noticed something different in the way she walked. Not confidence. Control. The kind that comes from someone who believes they are still ahead. She knocked exactly twice. Not too soft, not too aggressive, just enough to signal intention. When I opened the door, she smiled immediately. "Angela," she said warmly, "thank you for seeing us." Us. Not I. Not Ethan. Us. She stepped inside without hesitation, scanning the room the same way she always did. But this time I was scanning her too. She carried a thin folder in her hand. Legal-sized, structured, intentional. We sat in the living room. Ethan sat beside her, but slightly behind, like he wasn't sure where he belonged. Vanessa placed the folder on the table. "I'll be direct," she said calmly. "There are some urgent financial matters we need to address as a family." Family. That word again. Always used like a bridge. Never like truth. I nodded slightly. "Go on." She opened the folder. Inside were printed documents, neatly organized. Too neatly. "There are some inconsistencies in household asset allocation," she continued, "and given your age and recent confusion with digital systems, Ethan and I believe it would be safer if certain responsibilities were transferred." Ethan shifted slightly beside her, but he didn't speak. I looked at him briefly, then back at her, transferred to who I asked calmly. Vanessa smiled softly. "To us," she said. There it was. No hesitation anymore. No disguise. Just direction. She continued. "We can manage your financial accounts, ensure bills are paid correctly, and protect your estate from unnecessary complications." Unnecessary complications? Like me? I leaned back slightly. "And what exactly do you consider unnecessary?" She didn't miss a beat. Stress, she said. Mistakes. Memory lapses. Confusion. "It happens naturally with age." Ethan flinched slightly at that word age, but still said nothing. I noticed Rebecca had not arrived yet. That meant timing was still in my control. Vanessa slid a document toward me. A power of attorney form. My eyes dropped to it briefly, then back up. "You want me to sign this?" I asked. "Yes," she said gently. "It would make everything easier. For everyone." Ethan finally spoke. "Mom, maybe we should just consider it," he said quietly. "It's not about taking anything away. It's just organizing things better." His voice wasn't confident. It was rehearsed. That realization hurt, but it also confirmed something important. He wasn't leading this. He was repeating it. I picked up the document slowly. Vanessa watched my hands closely. Too closely. I could feel it. She thought she had reached the final step. The moment of surrender. But what she didn't know was that I had already prepared for this exact moment. I placed the document back on the table. "Before I sign anything," I said calmly, "I want clarification." Vanessa smiled slightly. "Of course." I turned slightly toward Ethan. "Did you know your name has been used in multiple financial applications without full authorization?" His face went pale immediately. Vanessa's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened instantly. "What are you talking about?" Ethan asked quickly. I continued evenly. "Loans, credit extensions, account access requests, some approved, some blocked, all flagged." Ethan turned toward Vanessa slowly. "Vanessa, what is she talking about? Silence?" For the first time that night, Vanessa didn't respond immediately. That silence was louder than anything she had said so far. Rebecca chose that exact moment to enter the house. Behind her was Daniel Harris, and everything shifted instantly. Vanessa's posture changed. Not dramatically, but enough. Enough to show recognition. "Oh," she said softly. "So this is what this is." Rebecca placed a folder on the table. "No," she said firmly. "This is what we can prove." Daniel followed, placing bank records beside it. "I believe you've seen these," he said calmly. Vanessa looked at the documents, then at me, and for the first time, the smile disappeared completely. Ethan stood up slowly. "Vanessa," he said quietly, "tell me this isn't true." She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes moved between all of us, assessing, measuring, calculating escape routes that no longer existed. And then finally she spoke. I was trying to fix everything she said, but her voice wasn't confident anymore. It was breaking. And in that moment, I knew the truth had finally reached her faster than her control could contain it. The room felt different the moment Vanessa said I was trying to fix everything. Not because it explained anything, but because it confirmed what we already knew. This was no longer about pretending. The structure she had built around Ethan, around me, around every financial and emotional connection, it was collapsing in real time. Ethan stood frozen, looking at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "Fix what exactly?" he asked quietly. His voice wasn't angry yet. That made it more dangerous. Vanessa didn't answer immediately. Her eyes moved between me, Rebecca, and Daniel Harris, like she was trying to calculate which angle still gave her leverage. But there were no angles left. Rebecca spoke first. "Vanessa Carter," she said firmly, "you are currently under investigation for attempted financial exploitation, identity misuse, and unauthorized access attempts to protected accounts." Vanessa gave a short, sharp laugh. "I never accessed anything," she said quickly. "Everything was consensual." Ethan agreed. Angela was just confused. "I was not confused," I interrupted calmly. The room went still. That was the first time she actually looked directly at me without a mask. No warmth, no charm, just irritation. Daniel stepped forward and placed another document on the table. "These are bank records showing repeated flagged attempts," he said, "all tied to your devices or accounts linked to you." Vanessa's breathing changed slightly. Not panic yet, but pressure. Ethan shook his head slowly. "You told me it was all approved." Vanessa turned to him immediately. "I was handling it," she said sharply for the first time. "Do you think I wanted this mess? Do you think I had a choice?" That tone cracked something in Ethan's expression. Confusion shifted into realization. "What mess?" he asked. Silence again. Rebecca didn't wait. "We also found evidence of additional credit lines opened under your name," she said to Ethan, "some of which you did not personally authorize." Ethan blinked. What he whispered. Vanessa stepped forward slightly. "Those were temporary solutions." "Stop," Ethan said suddenly. It wasn't loud, but it cut through her immediately. He looked at her, his hands trembling now, but his voice stronger. "Just stop talking for a second." The room went completely still. I watched my son carefully. Something inside him was shifting, not exploding, not collapsing, but waking up. Ethan turned to me. "Mom, how long have you known about this?" I answered honestly. "Long enough to make sure you and I were protected." That hit him harder than anything else, because it meant I had been preparing while he was still inside it. Vanessa noticed the shift immediately. Her voice softened again. "Ethan," she said gently, stepping closer. "You know, I've been under pressure. I've been trying to keep everything stable for us. You were drowning in work. Your credit was already damaged. I was just trying to protect you." "That's not protection," Rebecca said sharply. "That's manipulation." Vanessa snapped her head toward her. "You don't know anything about our relationship," she said. But Rebecca didn't flinch. "I know enough," she replied. "And so does the bank. And so does the law." Vanessa's gaze flicked back to me, and for the first time I saw something underneath her anger. Fear. Not of punishment, of losing control completely. She turned back to Ethan one last time. "You're really going to believe them over me?" she asked softly. That question hung in the air like a final attempt to regain emotional footing. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, and then he said something that changed everything. "I don't know what to believe anymore." Vanessa went still, because that was the beginning of the end. Not accusation, uncertainty. She took a slow breath, then suddenly reached for the folder on the table. But Daniel stepped forward immediately. "Don't touch that," he said firmly. Her hand stopped midair. For the first time, she realized she wasn't in control of the room anymore. Ethan stepped slightly away from her. Not dramatically, just enough. But that small distance was everything. Vanessa's voice dropped. "You think this is over?" she said quietly. No one answered. She let out a short, bitter laugh. "You have no idea what I've been dealing with," she said. "You think this is just about money? It's not." Rebecca narrowed her eyes. "Then explain it." Vanessa hesitated. For the first time, she looked cornered. Then she said it. "I owe people money," she admitted. "A lot of it." Silence. Even Ethan froze. Vanessa continued faster now, like the words were finally breaking through resistance. Loans, gambling debts, credit lines. I was trying to consolidate everything. I needed access to capital. I thought if I could stabilize Angela's assets temporarily, I could fix everything before it got worse. Ethan's voice cracked. "You used me." Vanessa turned to him immediately. "I was protecting you too," she said quickly. "They were going to come after you next." "That's not protection," I said again calmly but firmly. "That's survival through exploitation." Her eyes flicked toward me again, sharper now. "Easy for you to say," she snapped. "You don't know what it's like to have everything collapsing around you." I held her gaze. "You don't get to collapse other people's lives to keep yours standing," I replied quietly. That sentence hit harder than any accusation, because it removed justification, not emotion, just truth. Vanessa stepped back slightly. For a moment, she looked like she might still push forward, still fight, still manipulate her way out. But then she looked at Ethan, and something in her expression changed. Not softness, not regret. Recognition that the emotional leverage was gone. Ethan shook his head slowly. "I trusted you," he said. Vanessa didn't respond. "I trusted you," he repeated louder this time. Still nothing. Rebecca stepped forward. "Vanessa Carter," she said firmly, "you are not being arrested at this moment. But all financial activity tied to you and Mr. Robinson is now frozen pending investigation." Vanessa exhaled sharply, and for the first time, she stopped speaking entirely. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful, it was final. Ethan sat down slowly, as if the weight of everything had finally reached his body. I walked over and placed my hand gently on his shoulder. He didn't pull away. Vanessa stood in the center of the room for a few seconds longer. Then she picked up her bag. No dramatic exit, no final speech. Just a quiet realization that the structure she built had already ended before she was willing to accept it. At the door, she paused, not looking at me, not looking at Rebecca, only Ethan. but he didn't move. She left without another word, and when the door closed, the house didn't feel tense anymore. It felt empty, but for the first time in a long, long time. That emptiness didn't feel like danger. It felt like recovery beginning. The silence after Vanessa left didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the first deep breath after holding my lungs underwater for too long. No one spoke for several seconds. Even Daniel Harris and Rebecca Miller stayed still, as if any sudden movement might disturb the fragile reality settling in the room. Ethan was the first to break. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. "I didn't see it," he said quietly. "I really didn't see it." His voice wasn't defensive. It was empty. I sat beside him and placed my hand gently on his back. "You weren't supposed to see it alone," I said softly. "That's how control works." He shook his head slightly. "I thought I was helping her." Rebecca stepped closer, her tone calmer now. "You were responding to manipulation under pressure. That's different." Ethan let out a long breath like something inside him had finally collapsed into honesty. "I feel stupid," he whispered. I turned to him immediately. "No," I said firmly. "You feel betrayed. There's a difference." That made him look up at me for the first time since she left, and I saw it clearly now. Not just exhaustion, not just confusion. Grief. Grief for a version of his life that had already been rewritten without his permission. Daniel cleared his throat gently. "The accounts are fully secured now," he said. "No further access attempts will go through without legal authorization." Rebecca nodded, "And the documentation we gathered is strong. This will proceed through formal investigation." I felt something inside me loosen slightly. Not victory, stability. But the emotional part of the story wasn't over yet. That came later. That night, Ethan stayed at my house. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. He just stayed. We sat in the kitchen for a long time, the same kitchen where so much had quietly shifted over the past weeks. The same table where Vanessa had once spoken in soft, controlled sentences. The same space where I first began to notice I was being erased piece by piece. Now it felt different. Not safe, but honest. Ethan finally spoke again after a long silence. "Did you ever think I chose her over you?" he asked quietly. I shook my head immediately. "No," I said. "I thought you were being pulled away from both of us without realizing it." He nodded slowly. "That's exactly how it felt," he admitted. "Like I was always trying to catch up to something I couldn't fully understand." I looked at him carefully. "You don't have to catch up anymore," I said. "You just have to rebuild." That word rebuild hung in the air for a moment. He repeated it softly. "Rebuild." The next morning, Rebecca called with updates. Vanessa had been formally flagged in multiple financial institutions. The fraud pattern wasn't isolated. There were overlapping debts loan attempts and identity-linked accounts tied to different regions. Tyler Carter's involvement confirmed the pressure network around her was real and ongoing. She wasn't working alone, Rebecca said, but she was the central point of execution. That phrase stayed with me. Central point of execution. Not just victim. Not just perpetrator. Something in between. That afternoon, I went to my front porch and sat for a while. The air felt lighter than it had in weeks. For the first time, I noticed small things again, the sound of birds, the movement of trees, the quiet rhythm of a neighborhood that had continued existing while my life felt like it was narrowing into a single point of survival. Ethan joined me later. He sat beside me without speaking at first. Then he said, "I want to fix my life." but I don't know where to start. I looked at him gently. You start small, I said. One honest decision at a time. He nodded. A pause. Then he asked, do you think she ever cared I didn't answer immediately? Not because I didn't know, but because the answer wasn't simple. Finally, I said, I think she cared about what she needed from people. Sometimes that looks like care. Until it doesn't anymore. Ethan absorbed that quietly. Later that week, we learned Vanessa had agreed to cooperate with investigators under legal pressure. The debts were deeper than we had initially known. Gambling losses, hidden credit lines, and external pressure from creditors had built a situation she could no longer maintain. But what surprised me most wasn't the legal outcome. It was what happened when Ethan received a short message from her. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't denial. It was just 3 words. I'm sorry, Ethan. He stared at it for a long time. Then he deleted it without responding. Not out of anger, but acceptance. That was the moment I realized something important. Healing doesn't always come with closure from the person who caused the damage. Sometimes it comes from no longer needing it. Weeks passed, then months. Ethan started rebuilding his life slowly. He moved into a smaller apartment. He changed jobs within the same field. He began therapy, something he initially resisted but later admitted helped him untangle what had happened. We didn't talk about Vanessa every day anymore. Eventually, we didn't talk about her at all. Instead, we talked about normal things again. Small things. Real things. One afternoon, while helping me in the garden, Ethan looked at me and said, I think I finally understand what you were trying to protect me from. I smiled slightly. I wasn't trying to protect you from life, I said. Just from losing yourself inside someone else's version of it. He nodded, and for the first time in a long time he smiled back. Not a forced one, a real one. That evening after he left, I stood on my porch again and looked out at the quiet street. Nothing dramatic had changed outside, but everything inside me had. I thought about how easily love can be used as a doorway, how trust when misplaced can become a tool instead of a bond, and how silence is often where control grows the fastest. But I also thought about something else. Strength doesn't always look like confrontation. Sometimes it looks like noticing something small, before it becomes something irreversible, and acting on it, before it's too late. As the sun began to set, I placed my hand on the porch railing and finally felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not fear, not tension, just calm. Not because everything had been perfect, but because I had learned something I would never forget again. You can love people deeply without ever giving them control over your life. What happened with Vanessa taught me something I will never forget for the rest of my life. Manipulation rarely arrives loudly. It doesn't always look like cruelty at first. Sometimes it comes dressed as kindness, concern, and help. It slowly replaces trust with dependence, and before you realize it, you are no longer making your own choices. You are simply reacting to someone else's control. I used to believe that loving family meant giving people unlimited access to your life. I was wrong. Real love still needs boundaries. In fact, without boundaries, love can become the very doorway that allows harm to walk in. But I also learned something just as important. It is never too late to wake up and take your power back. Even when things feel confusing, even when you feel isolated, even when you doubt your own instincts, there is always a moment where clarity returns. And when it does, even one calm decision can change everything. I didn't fight Vanessa with anger. I fought back with awareness, patience, and truth. To anyone watching this who has ever felt controlled, dismissed, or quietly pushed aside, your voice still matters. Your instincts still matter, and your life is still yours to protect. If this story touched you in any way, I would truly love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced something like this or seen it happen to someone close to you? And if you enjoy these emotional storytelling journeys, please consider subscribing. It means a lot and helps me continue sharing stories that matter.